Hello, Talia, and thank you for joining me today. How are you feeling today?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. I'm well, thank you. All right, before we begin this session, I actually just want to talk to you about a couple of things. For one, you'll notice that I have a notepad with me and just a pen here, but I promise you I'm just taking quick notes. There's absolutely nothing on the notes that identifies you or any of your problems. It's just something for me to rely back onto in case for next sessions I have something to go off of. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so before we begin, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then we'll move on to you. So my name's Nadire. I have my MSW credentials from University of Toronto. I've been in the business for about 10 to 15 years now. I want to say it's roughly around there. Stop counting after the 10 year. But yeah, and I have been with the organization we're currently at right now, which is just one family at a time, and I've been here for about 5 years or so, and I love my job and I love everything that we do here, so I'm excited to work with you and figure out where we're going with it. But before we begin, I do just want to touch base a little bit on confidentiality. Are you at all familiar with it?
A little.
A little bit? Okay, I'm just going to touch back a little bit more. So basically confidentiality for me means that everything that you say stays between these four walls and nothing else. Nothing you say will be repeated to anyone. Now, with that being said, there are some circumstances that do unfortunately require me by law to break confidentiality, and the first one being that if you disclose to me that you have intent of harming yourself, others, and or a child, any of that matters, I will be obligated to break confidentiality and report that to the right officers / the right authority for it. The second one being that if my notes are ever subpoenaed by the court and I have to hand them over, that is where I would have to break confidentiality, unfortunately, and I do have to send those over to them. And the third one being that if you disclose to me that there is harm of a child, whether it be physically, sexually, or any of that sort, I am by law obligated to report that to my supervisor as well as to the right authorities for it. All right, is there any questions about it before we move on?
No.
All right, perfect. All right, tell me a little bit about yourself. What brings you in today?
Today, I just feel like I'm lacking a support system a little bit, and I'm looking just to talk about a situation with my sister.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's fair enough. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on the situation regarding your sister?
Yeah. So, she's been drinking. It's okay. She's been drinking to cope with her struggles, and she's got a tough job, and she's got a demanding boss, and this and that, and she's having a hard time. But she's using alcohol as a coping strategy, and she and her spouse drink a lot on the weekends, and I'm just feeling a little bit worried about her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite a lot to unpack on the first session, but we'll slowly but surely make our way through as we go on. I do want to talk a little bit more about the situation with your sister. So we just have a little bit of background, and you mentioned something about your parents. Do you mind just touching base a little bit with that a little more?
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
When we were growing up, our parents drank a lot. And they started drinking after our grandparents passed away to cope. So my sister and I were pretty neglected, and we had to do a lot of stuff on our own sometimes, and she took care of me for a lot of our youth. But yeah, our parents were definitely alcoholics, and she's kind of falling into the same pattern right now, so it's just feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And I've tried to talk to her about it several times, but she's pretty defensive. It gets pretty upset when I bring up like alcoholism because she doesn't think it's a problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very sorry to hear that you're going through that. It seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong by any means at all of this, seems to me as if you're getting a little bit disappointed with your sister in the fact that she's seen what alcohol could do to someone and yet she's still progressed to go down that road. Am I close on that part?
Yeah. I am definitely disappointed in her because like she's seen growing up our whole lives like how this can be so damaging, and then she whether or not she realizes that she's doing it again herself and falling into those same patterns. So I don't understand why she's doing it. And it does really make me disappointed, because like, we've learned what it can do, so why would you not like find other coping strategies, or like try to like handle your stress better and rely on drinking to solve problems?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Definitely can be a lot, especially for someone to deal with it by yourself. And you mentioned nieces and nephews, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, she's got kids, and I don't want my nieces and nephews to grow up the way that we grew up, because it's so sad. And I don't want them to be neglected either, because their parents, my sister and brother-in-law, because they're drinking so much, I don't want them to feel like their parents don't care about them, or like they're not there for them.
Yeah. Have you, it's just a question in that sense, but I am sensing that frustration and that lack of disappointment in your sister, that she's, or not lack of disappointment per se, but disappointment in the fact that she's going down that road, and she's now putting her children in that position that you once were with her.
Yeah, it's definitely hard, and her husband, oh my god, he is so frustrating. He is the worst and super toxic for her.
Okay, when we say toxic, what do you mean by that?
Well, he never had like alcoholism in his family. I wouldn't say anyone in his family are like alcoholics, but there's definitely a lot more like drinking in their family than like the family that I'm gonna bring up. And I think he is encouraging her to drink on the weekends with him, or maybe even some weeknights, because that's how he's coping with his struggles. So they're drinking together, and he knows how vulnerable she is. So I feel like he doesn't respect her, because she's so vulnerable to drinking, and he should see that, you know what I mean? He should recognize that and know that that's like not the right path for her.
Yeah. Fear, correct me if I'm wrong, but a fear of sadness is what you're feeling for your sister, in that aspect that she doesn't have that support system that she thought she would have had, in a sense. Is that what you're kind of going off from?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Seeing her in that position to you, especially having a spouse who is toxic, as you explained, can be quite frustrating for a family member to witness it and not realize why your family member isn't also realizing it in those characteristics. It's definitely a lot to unpack. I want to ask, how's your relationship with your brother-in-law and your nieces and nephews?
I've always been close with them, but I've always been close with my nieces and nephews, but it's been a little bit rocky, I think, with between myself and my brother-in-law, because he knows that I don't like support him like drinking on the weekend so much, and like with my sister, because of like our past and like our upbringing and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say it's the best, but like I might also be biased because I don't think he's like the right person for her. And they're just not a good, like, they're not really a good match in my opinion. So yeah.
Well, very sorry to hear that. It sounds quite frustrating to be able to witness that and go through it as well with yourself there, especially being in that position and not wanting the best for your sister and her spouse as well as the children, but not being able to get that through to them in a sense, right?
Yeah.
All right. I do just want to ask, have you noticed any behaviors in your sister that you might have noticed in your parents that would have led to that substance abuse?
I don't know if this is gonna like answer the question perfectly, so let me know.
There's no perfect answer.
Okay. Toxic behaviors from my sister is like just like our mom. When she's drinking, she gets really emotional. So the last time that we got in an argument, she was drinking like all night. It was on a weekend. And so, what?
Sorry, continue.
That's okay. That's okay. So, she was drinking on the weekend when we were hanging out all day, and it's still recording. Yeah. Just a little battery.
Okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties there.
That's okay.
I apologize to interrupt you in the middle, but please continue.
That's okay. Yeah, toxic behaviors from her. She was drinking all weekend when we were hanging out, and then she got super emotional and started she was crying and bringing up all this stuff from the past, which is exactly what our mom used to do when she was constantly drinking. So right then and there, I was super disappointed, and I'm like, are you kidding me, Abby? You're gonna do this exact same thing. You know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? That's exactly what mom does. So she's drinking and getting really emotional and being crazy and crying, and I am just trying to calm her down, but she's still wasted. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to take care of her and be gentle, but it's hard to reason with somebody who's under the influence. So when we were talking, and I was asking her if she was feeling okay, and she got super defensive and was like, "Oh, why? Because you think I'm drinking just like mom?" And I said, well, yes. I do think that, because to me you are, and I'm concerned for you, and I care about you, especially since you're my family. You know what I mean? So yeah, so she got really defensive, and she got really, really mad, and we started arguing. And then we ended up going to bed that night, and because I was sleeping over at her house, and we went to sleep that night. And the next morning, she still thought that she had something to be mad about, even though she was just talking to me and venting to me, and then talking to me about her husband and this and that, and I'm just trying to listen. And then she just starts going off and bringing up stuff from the past, and yeah. So the next morning when we woke up, she thought she had something to be mad about and didn't even remember what the conversation was, just like mom used to do. So I'm just feeling frustrated because we had this whole talk, and then she doesn't even realize or even remember what's going on. So we're not really on speaking terms right now.
Okay.
But I don't want my relationship with my sister to fall apart, because I still really do care about her, but I'm just frustrated with her because of the way that she's acting. And she's older than me, so you should know better. You know what I mean? You're a grown up, so you should know how to behave and not be drinking to cope.
Yeah. You mentioned something of how she does some of the behaviors your mom does, and I want to touch base a little bit on that. Is it, now again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's that when you see her going through that, it takes you yourself back to those times when your mom and dad used to do that, and so you feel like that little kid again.
Yeah, it's definitely triggering, and it's upsetting, because that was something that we were used to for our whole lives, and it's sad to see that kind of coming back around with Abby.
It's sad witnessing your family members go through something and you're on the outside and you're trying to scream at them.
Yeah.
You need help, or you need this, and they don't see it that way until they do, right?
Yeah.
So I can definitely sense and get your anxiety and your frustrations from it. Now, with that being said, you said you're not on speaking terms as of right now, just due to the conversation you've had with her and that led to the fighting. What does the conversation look like when you are talking to her, when you brought this up, for example?
I think the last time that we had talked about it, it definitely turned into a fight very quickly. there was a lot of yelling going on, which obviously I don't want, but it's hard because she's so defensive. But I wish I could approach that conversation another way.
Okay, well, I think I touched a bit on quite a few points here.
Yeah.
I do want to give you a bit of homework if you're okay with that and if you're up for it.
Okay.
Basically, I would like you to have a conversation with her, but if you've noticed how when we were having a conversation, my eyes stayed on you and I stayed in a calm manner and you were also in a calm manner because you reflected off of each other, we reflected off of each other's behavior.
Yeah.
Is it okay if you were to have a conversation with her, but you managed to keep yourself calm for a little bit and manage to get past that and overcome that little bit of a traumatic part in the sense and just be present with her and hold contact with her and speak in a calm and professional manner with her and see if that maybe gets in, and then if you want to report back to me on how that conversation went and whether that opened up more of her, like opened up the conversation with her more, and if she's willing to want to do more with it. Would you be open for something like that?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I also want to have a conversation with her, and like, she's my family, and I care about her. It's hard though, because like in the moment, you don't think to try to hold yourself in this way. But I do definitely think it's important, and I think that doing that, maybe we'll be able to like have an easier time moving forward with it. I'm not always like calm when I'm like trying to talk to somebody like that, so I think that maybe like trying to keep myself regulated while we're talking will really help the conversation flow better. Yeah, I definitely, I would want her to feel like I'm coming from a place of care rather than like a parenting role of like you're like disappointing me. Like, I want her to feel like I'm there for her. So I do feel like maybe like the calming tone would be a lot better than the parent role, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I definitely sense the frustration, but also the hopelessness you feel in that sense of wanting to help her, but also not wanting to come off as a parental figure to her, because you want to be able to help her, but also realize that she is in charge of her own decisions in a sense, and at the end of the day, it's how best we can support them with the decisions they make, right? Yeah, so I think this is a good starting point. We'll reconvene next time and we'll talk base about how the conversation went with her, and then I want to touch a bit more base next time on how growing up with your parents, how that made you feel and how you have carried that on into relationship with your sister / your parents if you have maintained one, but also how that's also helped, or that's how also it maintained your relationship with your partners and everything of that sort. Is that okay with you? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's okay.
Is there any other questions or concerns you'd like to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No. Yeah.
All right. Well, it was lovely to see you, and thank you for reaching out. Hopefully we can work through something and we can help you get all the answers, okay?
I'll see you next week.
Yeah.